Welcome to the Got Academy podcast. Last Corona special. Go.
Last Corona special. We have experienced a wave. Are we in halftime? We don't really know. Is it as bad as we thought? Well, it's been as bad as some people thought. It's been worse than some other people thought. It's also been better than a lot of the really pessimistic hawks thought. Actually, we just don't really know where we are. It looks okay, but what's going to happen next? Nobody knows. Let's see. In any case, we're all tired of it. We're tired of Corona. Everybody's tired of Corona. I talked to my daughter about it, and she says, and she's just turned 7, she says, I don't understand how anybody could like coronavirus. And I agree. Nobody likes the coronavirus.
No.
Hi, Gil. How are you?
Hi, I'm Gil Kidron. Hello, Dr. Rutger Vos. There's one person, 2 people in the world who like the coronavirus. The coronavirus has been like a stroke of luck for them once in a century. First of them is presidential hopeful Joe Biden. Now he has a pretext to stay at home, not speak to anyone, not show his face because he can barely speak, and nothing that he says appeals to anybody. And Trump just lost so much support across the board, also from people above 65.
White people above 65.
Sorry.
Just get the demographic right.
Sorry. When I say people, it's just obvious that I'm talking about white people. Come on. And just lost all our non-white audience. And second person that really likes Corona, and we can also talk about the political aspects of Corona, is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who lost the election, was on his way out to stand trial, thanks to the Corona, still Prime Minister. Started standing trial, but it seems that he will be able to wiggle his way out of it. And now there's no even light at the end of the tunnel. But outside of these 2 people, your daughter is right about 99.9999. Nobody likes Corona.
Somebody else who really likes coronavirus must be Xi Jinping, because
Do you think he likes the Chinese king?
he loves it. He can't get enough of it, I bet. I mean, within the last 2-3 months, the situation, the balance of power in the world has shifted like an earthquake. And China can now do whatever they want.
Right.
They just took Hong Kong, basically, and they just had 5,000 troops in India, right? Did you hear about that?
No.
Nobody does it. No, nobody talks about it. Of course not. That's kind of uncomfortable. And meanwhile, they go around, helping others out financially and with medical supplies.
Hey, guys, they came into India to where they have like a disputed border to that part?
Yeah. They're digging in.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 people. 3 people like the coronavirus. But the other assholes, like Putin, Bolsonaro, Erdogan, they don't like it one bit. It just depends on your immediate political situation.
Well, it depends also if you are only bluster or if you also have, political instincts for opportunism, right? If you're only just shouting things and you thought that your shouting would never ever meet with physical reality, then you have a problem. But if you also have the, vulture-like instincts to capitalize on opportunity, then this is pretty good. So there's different classes of politicians who either make hay out of this because they're kind of smart in a reptilian way, and there's the ones that just shout and they don't really know what to do.
Though it depends, what do you need? Like here in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu really, this came manna from heaven. Okay, let's close everything down, close all the democratic institutions, because that's what suited him and his purposes. Trump, on the other hand, that's not good for him politically. He's okay, he's the opposite. Let's open everything. So he generally was very lucky in 2016, but now he seems to be very unlucky, because I would have given him more than 50% chance to beat Biden before the coronavirus.
Oh, he might still beat Biden.
Yeah, but now I would give him less than 50% chance to beat Biden. Like all the polls show that he's doing very, 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 very badly. And just like this is the first real tangible thing, concrete thing, that it's really hard to half-ass it and just say, oh, this is bullshit.
I think we have it very well under control. We have very little problem in this country at this moment. Well, we pretty much shut it down. And I think the numbers are going to get progressively better as we go along. We have it very much under control in this country. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. We're in great shape compared to other places. We are in really good shape. Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
What did we get wrong? Why did we get it wrong? How come so quickly it just poof disappeared from most countries where it had hit? There are countries where it's hitting now, but countries that started it in February, March now are coming out. And here in Israel, even though it's a global crisis of unprecedented proportions in terms of its global nature, it's also super local. Like in Tel Aviv, where I live, the city where I live in Israel, we have like one sick person a week or something like really, really silly. And since we came out of lockdown, we have less people with corona than we had before. Oh. Though in Brazil, it's getting worse. Okay. Your scientific take, let's start like from the big picture and then slowly get into details.
I think the big picture, well, there are some things that we just couldn't know that just had to be discovered over time.
A lot of things.
Right, when we did our first podcast about this, we had just come to the grand insight that the R naught, as it was presented in these pandemic movies, is actually something dynamic, which is dependent on the response.
Yes.
And we had just kind of figured that out, but right now, the policy of a lot of countries is really consciously to measure R naught dynamically and keep it below 1, which means that the virus slowly extinguishes, right? So there's just, kind of progressing insight for all of us there. But I think there's a lot of things also are just more complicated than any model can really capture, right? Like
I want to talk a little bit about the models. So go ahead.
No, well, I guess you go for it. What do you want to talk about?
Here, the people who ran the crisis, were mathematicians and physicists, a lot more than epidemiologists. And when I'm not a mathematician. I wasn't even that good at math, but I was looking at their numbers, and I'm talking about like March, just like at the published numbers. I'm like, okay, I don't understand why you are increasing the lockdown, even though the numbers show that we are no way heading to be like the next Italy, just like looking at the numbers. But people were so hysterical that it was hard to have a normal conversation about it. And now epidemiologists are saying, okay, this virus is not a number. It changes. There's a lot of things about it that we don't know. So treating it as if X, Y, and Z, and if this person infects 2 people, and then this will, and like this determinism from an article that I read yesterday with a lot of epidemiologists Israeli epidemiologists. They were saying like, this is what we said that was going to happen, that you can't put it into a nice, neat equation.
Yeah, it's true. But there were so many assumptions that we had to make also in order to be kind of prudent. So one of the things that is becoming increasingly clear is that the main transmission really is through the air, through aerosols. And we didn't know that at first. So, for example, how dangerous were surfaces? We're now kind of figuring out, well, not that dangerous.
Really? Not that dangerous?
No, not that dangerous. And at some point, viral particles were being detected in wastewater in the Netherlands. Well, does that mean that we treat wastewater and use it as drinking water again? Is the coronavirus coming out of the taps? All these kind of things, we had no idea. But turns out it's very much really somebody has to breathe into your face.
And this is specifically the coronavirus. We don't know what will be with the next one, right?
Right. No, this is just how this particular thing behaves, right? So gradually we started to just discover what are actually the super spreader events. So for example, there's been a bunch of different cases where choir practices have turned out to be very bad. So actually just people breathing deeply, singing into each other's ears, or at least nearby each other. Those were some big events compared to, also if you compare to other places where people might congregate in larger numbers. This has been particularly dangerous. We didn't know that. We didn't know, okay, how does, for example, the outside compared to the inside, and now the inside, like what we've learned, the inside has become that actually the aerosolized particles, of course, keep flying around indoors much more than outside. So closing things outdoors, like street markets or parks or something like that, has made almost no difference, whereas sitting inside in air-conditioned places where air circulates for hours and hours and hours, that's actually been the dangerous part. So we didn't know that, and what we still don't even know, for example, is whether this is just seasonal. Like, it's now fading out, and whether you have lockdown or not, and whether you come out or not, it just seems to be fizzling out. Maybe it is because of the season.
Yeah. Like, I want to go back to your earlier point. We also want to talk about this podcast will cap our Corona specials, right? Until
the next wave.
Until the next wave, or to some other pandemic that will kill us all, finally.
Yeah, I hear for... Gil, have you heard what they're going to do for COVID-20?
Just end it already, end it!
Yeah, I think they're going to do something dermatological this time, so it's going to be totally different, but it's pretty exciting. Yeah. They're going to come out in like November or something, and then and it slowly ramps up, you know. Chinese labs are working around the clock to come up with something new.
Try several stuff. I don't know. Just one pandemic is boring now already.
Yeah, with like expansion packs for like new functionality. Yeah. It's gonna be
looking at it as a sequel. As a sequel has to be bigger and better. Otherwise, nobody will be interested. Nobody will go out just for COVID-20. Yeah. No, 3 COVID-20s. That's like the Avengers. All the COVIDs together are coming out.
Oh, it's the greatest crossover event in history.
So, boom.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
But I think the thing also with the modeling, there's this joke about a physicist trying to do biology and trying to study biomechanics, right? And so, okay, a horse galloping, let's try to model it. Well, the horse starts out as a perfect sphere. Right, so it's all like it's overly simplified. And I guess with the viral modeling also, just once you try to put it in numbers, then you start out with something that kind of diffuses homogeneously in all directions, when in reality there's enormous structure to this. And this is also what we saw in the Netherlands, right? There's like from a couple of seeding events, like the carnival in the south of the country, it has never really spread homogeneously throughout the country. It's still now, like 2 months later, when you look at the maps, there's these specific municipalities where they had the carnival, and those are the worst places, much more so than the big cities, even though you would think, big cities, high density, and it hasn't really materialized in that sense. And I guess when you think about it a little bit also, like this is really interesting about this notion of herd immunity, because there the modeling is also that, well, it has to be some really high number of the population in order for it to work, right? Like 60, 70, 80% of the population. Maybe that's not really true, because there have to be people who have much, much more contact with other people than others, right? So the cashiers in the shops, the people, the bus drivers, and so on and so on and so on, healthcare workers. Yeah. Once they have immunity, then like they are the hub that's connecting all these other people. And if it stops at these hubs, then perhaps you can already reach some level of community immunity once it stops at them.
How come we didn't know that before? Okay, because this is actually also it's not scientific, it's also sociological and societal, like how society functions.
Yeah, but there's all sorts of weird things that we didn't know. Of course, like the animal industry showing itself from the worst side. Like in the Netherlands, there's also been one of these meatpacking plants, quote unquote, slaughterhouses, where there was. That's now the big outbreak in this country. That's one of them. The other is we apparently still have fur farms.
Really?
Like they are. Yeah. So they're already banned, but they had a grace period until, I don't know, 2025 or something like that to wrap up business. So we have some mink farms, and it turns out I guess mustelids in general, also catch it and can pass it on. Who would have thought that? But there we go.
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
What this crisis tells us about the bigger crisis around the corner that could really kill us all, and how the global community handled this crisis and what it says about the next one.
All of a sudden, humanity is faced by a challenge that doesn't really come out of, how people treat each other. It comes out of the world around us. And it is a scientific fact that hits us in the face, and we can see it with our own lying eyes right around us. And still, people are in denial, just totally in denial, right? There's been these demonstrations, these open-up demonstrations in the US, for example, and one of the organizers, she got it, right? Like it's very sad, but it's also kind of maybe a little bit poetic justice. And if
we wish her well, but we wish her to change her mind.
But okay, most just very sad because she's going to transmit it to other people. This is all terrible. Now, even with something like this, people are in denial. How on earth are we ever going to deal with climate change? I guess we just won't. It's just not going to happen. Because if you can deny this, then of course all the natural disasters that are coming our way and are already happening, the droughts, the more extreme weather events, all of that is just one by one that's just going to be denied and going to continue to be denied, and we'll just I guess we're just going to live with disaster.
Okay, let me push back on that. This crisis has exposed a lot of people, a lot of industries, a lot of political parties. We're not like really in the eye of the storm, but we're not really that far from it. So it's really hard to understand all the political and societal ramifications and processes that are now being, manifest themselves. And it might take a year, 2 years, 3 years until we'll know if there's a COVID-20, COVID-21 or something like that, where I don't know what the odds are, but it's not entirely not out of the realm of possibility. It will be harder to deny it then, first of all. It will be harder because people will know a lot of people that have died. And you say, okay, now you're going to party again? Are you going to party again now? You're going to party? It's not going to be the same, right? We're not going to be all in shock. We're going to be, okay, so we all have to go back now to quarantine, and we'll do this for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You see what happens when you disregard science. You think that science is just gonna, stay in the corner, and nature, and just say, okay, whatever. You say that I'm fake news, then I'll be fake news.
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
Well, there's two things that I still want to say. One of them is that throughout all of this, the man with the greatest insight in the dynamics of this whole thing, and the man who really, really stayed the course and predicted what would happen, is, of course, US President Donald Trump. He said at the beginning, and then one day it'll just disappear, and it'll be all over.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It could get worse before it gets better. It could maybe go away. We'll see what happens. Nobody really knows.
And that's exactly what happened. He just...
Boom, called it confirmed.
Here we go.
Just like that. Oh my goodness. Okay, what about the sipping of the disinfectants? He was right on that too, Mr. Scientist. Should we do the same?
look, he just needed to keep people afloat a little bit. Like, okay, not everybody understood what he's playing 4D chess. Okay, not like he has to come with simpler stories for the hoi polloi, to keep them on board. Okay. So that's one thing.
Okay, second thing.
Second thing. There's, I guess, this saying. I think it was Trotsky, wasn't it, who said like, history repeats itself first as a tragedy and then as a farce. And look, what's happening now is a tragedy. And when I think about that front page of the New York Times, it's very tragic. But if you compare it with something like the Black Death, let's say, then what we are doing right now is basically the farcical version of it, right? So we had the same kind of event where, at least in Europe, a pandemic starting out in Italy went as a wave over the continent, and like with the Black Death that took like 2 years, and it was 2 months. And where with the Black Death, the mortality was like 50-50, and now the survival rate is like 99% or something like that. But still, there's been all these different parallels in like the finger pointing of, it's the fault of, that ethnic group over there. In this case, I guess it was the Chinese. There's been the fake cures, right? There's been the religious mania. There's even been these weird, like, how do we pay? Like, I learned at the beginning of the pandemic how they used to hand each other money during the Black Death, which they disinfected with vinegar in these little stones with holes in them. And now, of course, we've gone much more cashless. And like even the magical thinking, like back then it was the malodors that would come in, and that's what give you the Black Death, and that's why they had these beaks with these herbs. And now it's the the 5G or whatever that's causing it. Right? Like the magical thinking and the total misunderstanding of what's actually happening is still unchanged.
And also trying to find like a reason. There must be a reason. The universe is trying to tell us that we don't really matter in the world. Nature is sending us a message. Back then it was your God telling us we have to repent and stuff. And sometimes shit just happens.
Yeah.
Just shit happens. Of course, we should have known better. We could have avoided coronavirus if the world had just like outlawed the animal industry. Just like that. Climate change, you get it like 30% better. Eliminate a bunch of viruses that could become pandemics or epidemics or whatever. But that might take some more time. I think, not even close to that. But I did read that there's a race to find a way to put some stuff in the cow's food that would make it stop farting so much.
That's important, right?
Yeah, it is important. Yeah. It is important. So just like kill the cow, take its babies, but just give it something, a pill, so it won't fart.
But first, squeeze the cow's titties, hey?
So next week, what are we posting next week? A great podcast about an incredible city. We're launching a new series of podcasts. Tell the people.
I mean, this is unbelievable. Look at this. There's no city like this in the world. There never was.
You act like you've never been here before.
I don't get here often enough. That's the problem. Can you picture how drop-dead gorgeous this city is in the rain? Imagine this town in the 20s. Paris in the 20s. In the rain, the artists and writers.
Oh, it's about Paris.
Oh, magnifique. Extraordinaire.
It's just a city. Half the time it smells like urine. That's rude, people.
I think you should shower more also.
Maybe I'm just smelling myself. That could be.
So next week, Paris in movies.
Yay.
Paris in movies.
Greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. the Moulin Rouge.
It was a great podcast. Now the people will feel that the listeners will feel that it's not worth their time. It's a very interesting podcast.
The conversation was very nice. Yeah.
The conversation was very nice.
Better than this
and
one.
And it's our first crack of it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you can, obviously, if you can't, then not. But if you can, spare a few, just like $2 a month, then you can go to patreon.com/gotacademy. That would be very, very helpful. I am honestly amazed, shocked, floored, flabbergasted by the loyalty of our patrons. Mm-hmm. Just in face of all kinds of changes in the world and on YouTube and here on the podcast. Boom. Thank you very much, everybody. And check out also our YouTube channel for the new reading videos about A Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. So thank you, Rutger.
Thank you.
Any parting words for people about the coronavirus? And we're closing the book on that.
Continue to be a little bit aware, because the Spanish flu pandemic, the second wave was the most deadly one. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Don't think now that this is over, it's all over. You can do whatever you like.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.